on the topic, Why Women Work at Work. For this, I would like to invite on stage Ms. Shreyasi Singh, who is the founder and CEO of Harappa, a learner-centered institution of the future committed to empowering its learners and tribe skills, an essential set of cognitive, social, and behavioral skills to enable individuals to continuously succeed at every stage of their career. And with this, please welcome Shreyasi with a huge round of applause.
You can hear me, right? Madhu, that was a great talk, and glad that you managed to get your way to the Harappa session. Thank you. I think we've left lunch far behind, but I'm sure I'm keeping people for tea and coffee. I'd also love a cup, but hopefully I'll make this worth your while. I'm going to, Madhu set it up nicely to cue to say some sharp speaking and forthright speaking, and I think I'll try and do that as well. I consider myself also an outsider trying to look in and outsider inside as a company that works with obviously learning custodians and talent custodians across industries and across India, now in the US as well. I feel like we have that perspective, so I'm going to, excuse my provocativeness as well as straightforwardness and forthrightness. I think after 11 or 12, I was making notes, after 11 or 12 sessions on the future of learning, I hope that is sorted, because I think we've talked about personalization, hybrid, content. The future of learning is clearly robust, positive, and shining, because you've all been talking about it. But I said, hey, let's look a little bit at the current state of half the world. I think we're talking about the future of learning for programs that we do in all our companies and our departments. But a really important piece of work that at least we do at Harappa and feel very, very strongly about, as well as very, very passionately about, is essentially around what happens to learning for women professionals at work, right? And really to be able to have that conversation as women, as assets. And just hot off the press, as I call it, we've been conducting a survey across enterprises and industries in India on women professionals for some of the new work that we've been doing in this area. Of course, we already have a flagship women's leadership program, and we've called it provocatively What Women Want. And I thought, okay, let me release this survey in this conversation, because obviously nothing more to add on the future of learning. Why me? I think Madhu spoke about himself as well. I think I'm taking a lot of cues from him, Madhu. Thank you. You've done half my job. Is to say, and one of my favorite principles in the Harappa library of frameworks for our cognitive social behavior skills is Aristotle's appeals, which is obviously logos, ethos, pathos, right? And so I said, hey, why can I have a special reason and special purpose to be able to speak about it? Because the ethos really is that as one of the 2%, only 2% of women, there are only 2% women CEOs in this country. And I feel so, therefore sort of that sets it up to say that. Now, I think everybody has read this. I think that one of the things is all of us need a media refresh, because I think that in all of these conferences, we're all sort of encountering all the data as well as all of the quotes that we also hold so dear. So I'm partly to blame for that as well. So I'm going to quickly run through this slide, but you know this, and everybody says this. Does everybody believe it is what we will come to later, right? But this has been obviously been bandied about a lot. Yet, and this is where now I'm going to try and again, taking off from Madhu to say, can I do some fear mongering, right? And I think this is fear-mongering not just for our companies and enterprises, but really employers are the educators that we never had. I really feel as learning custodians, talent custodians, you're more important than the dean of the colleges that you went to or your employees have gone to, more important than the principals of the schools that you or your employees have went to. We get out of formal education at 22, 23. The real work of learning actually begins then by the time we're 60, 65, 70, 80 that we're working. I really feel like learning professionals have to elevate their responsibility as well as elevate really what they do. It is that most of us genuinely get educated in our workplaces, because that's when sort of rubber hits the road. Yet what is going on is in the dichotomy in the world of work when it comes to women professionals. This is a dichotomy in India essentially. Over the last 5 years, India actually graduates more women from its colleges. And even on STEM education, which in the US and in Europe, there is such a skew between women graduates and male graduates. In India, we actually graduate even women at record numbers over the last 5-7 years. And that has been a lot of national investment. That has been a lot of social and cultural mindset. Our parents have changed, our grandparents have changed. So much has had to change for us to be enabled that kind of incredible progress on, graduation rates of women. Yet, we are actually falling when it comes to employability. And I think COVID has dealt an even bloodier blow on that because of many things. We thought that we were liberated by remote work and things like that, but if you see data, a lot of the women actually after COVID, women professionals have stepped back, scaled back for a variety of reasons, and we'll get into that. But the headline news is you graduate more women, national resources are spent, family income is spent, but really financial empowerment, which is what, and women's ambitions, that happens on an employability perspective, the gap is actually widening. It's like the crocodile's mouth for women's, potential and professional success is actually widening, which is a really bizarre situation for us to be in. Women face drop-offs on every rung of the corporate ladder, right? It starts at 37% is sort of the average participation at entry level. The first thing is called, the first stage of break is called the broken rung, happens around 28, 30 for a variety of reasons. Then of course participation at junior manager goes down by 10%. Of course, then you start hitting the glass ceiling. And of course, once you hit it, very few people survive it. That happens. Then of course, there is a, if you survive that, then you go and coast a little bit through, and then there is the glass cliff, as it's called, right? Which is participation at the CXO level, and the number that I was basically to. But the thing is that women face drop-offs in every rung of the corporate ladder. I call it the world's most dangerous obstacle course. It's like, it paints the picture of, Harrison Ford in Indiana Jones and, going through rickety, rope bridges in the Amazon forest and then coming, or, if you go to Disneyland or Universal Studios or any of those, where you go through those obstacle courses, it's like one thing after another, right? And you come back from the glass cliff bloodied and battered and bruised, and so much is going on, but really it is the world's most dangerous obstacle course, and we really need to pay much more attention to it, right? I think all of us really, have that responsibility of ensuring, and this, what does it do essentially for companies, right? I mean, of course, we should all be social-minded, and it's the right thing to do. It's not about being social-minded, but you're shrinking your talent pool by these kinds of numbers. And this is not diversity. I always keep saying the conversation on women is not diversity, it's half the world. What are you going to do when half the world is not engaged in whatever it is that you want to do? So I don't think it's about diversity, it's really about being half the world. And the shrinking talent pools or having such battled and bruised talent pools by the end of this. So what did we do recently at Harappa is, and I'm going to show you the data, which I call the ambition busted and dusted data, which is going to come up. But essentially to say one thing that has been being tracked for the last couple of years, 85% of Indian women say that they've obviously missed promotions at work. And I think a lot of the conversations, because we run a very popular women's leadership program, it's a 10-week cohort-based blended learning journeys. We actually have 90% completion, Madhu, so I'm going to disagree with you on that one, and it's possible. But feel like they've missed out. And a lot of conversation is, hey, is there an internal ambition gap? Is there, most people drop off? I think a lot of those, if we are not being politically correct all the time, I think a lot of those conversations happen that, of course, it's something, and it's true. I think this conversation with, if we talk about half the world, will have many, many perspectives and color to it, right? But I think the one really important conversation that comes up is, actually women step back themselves and they don't have ambition. So we said, okay, let's decode that. There are other things to decode as well on policy and infra and what senior leaders are saying and everything, but let's decode the ambition gap. And let's decode the ambition gap, right? So I said, okay, we started to decode the ambition gap. As I said, that we surveyed 520 women. We also surveyed 210 men across 5 levels, because you can't have a really nuanced and textured understanding of what's going on till obviously we didn't discriminate. We covered half the world with half the data points as well to try and arrive at that. And the ambition gap, as I call it, said the data really got us to bust a few myths, right? So what are the myths? So first myth, when it comes to workplace promotions in India, and there's no gender bias. Most everybody feels no, everybody gets promoted on merit, it seems, in every company at every level. I think even through just understanding that, promotions are rife with bias, and I think any human relationship and any human transaction and back and forth, and that's what promotions are. They're not some automated algorithm that throws up. It is essentially one person's understanding of another person's potential that is at play, and there will always be bias. And we found in the data that actually 72% of the men were getting vertical promotions, and only 29% were getting horizontal promotions. But when it came to women, there's a 14% difference. Only 58% were getting vertical, or were reporting vertical promotions. These are all reported data from respondents, right? Were reporting vertical promotions, and 41% were reporting horizontal promotions. Now, whether it's to do, what are the choices and reasons for that to have happened is really, I think all of you will know better. I'm sort of just seeding a thought for you to think about, and maybe this is an interesting data set to try and do for your departments, what's going on. Sometimes we don't, think about it, and obviously that's the job of data, to throw up interesting insights for us. So that's busted one, that it's not true that there is no difference in promotion. Of course there is, and in very different ways, right? Busted two, this is the core, at the core of the conversation on ambition. Women don't take enough action to move up the ladder, right? They're not at the networking events, they switch off at 5. I mean, I think all kinds of statements that would have been used as evidence to validate that ambition, validate that concept. And listen, this is not about men. I keep saying feminism is not biology, it's an ideology. Like environmentalism, capitalism, socialism, you choose to be who you are and what you believe in. All of us can believe differently. So it is not a tirade against men at all. I think it's all of us, and I think it's a collective responsibility. We actually found from the reported data that 73% men said that they're making an effort towards promotions, but 71% women also said that they're making an effort towards promotions. So clearly what we've hoped that we've busted as a myth is that women don't take enough action to move up the ladder. Next one, and the last one, at least for the talk here, we have many more in the report that we'll be able to send to you. Busted 3, sexism in India Inc. What's that, right? I think everybody's like, no, we're all in Delhi, Bangalore, Bombay, Hyderabad, Pune, everything is okay. We all have posh training, we all have diversity councils. It's all gone. What is this? You're in 2022, you actually believe this happens? And a lot of that sort of, I think Madhu had that, very interesting to see the term gaslighting come up in a conference like this. But I think all of us have a lot of that kind of conversation to say, hey, we're beyond this. We're like post-discrimination, really, is the belief in a lot of global workplaces as well as in Indian workplaces. But clearly the professionals, the 510 women that we polled over the last 2 months, don't believe that, right? So I think these are the 5 top things that came up. I think that one, the one on the bottom, listen, I have faced this. I have, as a non-techie, non-MBA founder, CEO of a VC invested technology, whatever, I have pitched to most of the top VCs that you've heard of, and in many other situations have often been mistaken for someone junior or even next to some of the male CXOs as I have. So, many of these, not all of these, not all of us will have experienced all of it, but I think most of us would have experienced many of it. And I think that's the way to at least think about this, right? I think this thing about judgment often question an area of expertise is, I think I've heard a lot from women colleagues at our companies or our teams as well, that listen, especially with other senior people, that when they have to manage upwards, that comes up, and clearly the data seems to validate that. So we busted those 3 myths. Now I think it's again time to put a few dust and rest off a few issues, and again 3 more. Clear behaviors desired from leaders. And I think I genuinely feel, I genuinely believe that it is difficult. These are difficult changes to make. And I think, because you don't know what people want, whether it's women, the title of the talk is what women want, but generally it's genuinely difficult to know what people want. In fact, it's difficult to know when what you want yourself in many cases. So obviously what people want. So we said, hey, how can leaders actually support you? What are you actually looking for, right? Was the question. I think this thing about publicly credit women for ideas and work, right? I think the thing about ideas came up very much because that's an intellectual expertise, creativity, curiosity, innovation. I think publicly crediting for ideas and work obviously came up, and we have a lot of qualitative data and conversations, because like we said that we also did conversations with 50 people in a one-on-one. These were like 1.5-hour conversations with those 50 people. Put in efforts to actively confront discrimination. There's a lot of conversation about being a bystander and an upstander, and I think clearly the perception is that most people are bystanders, even if they don't do anything wrong themselves. If they're seeing it around them, they're not actually coming in to step in, and nobody's saying this is about call-out culture. They're right there in a meeting. Lots of times it's coming from a place of blind spot ignorance, but later after that to say, hey, maybe you shouldn't have said that, separately to a person. So I think a lot of women professionals obviously are feeling that this actively confront discrimination, a lot of leaders are not leading the charge on, and enthusiastically sponsor one or more women for promotions, right? Like say that, hey, no woman has ever been above director in data science. I don't care. This is about personalized learning, that I will put someone there and then I will give them a course from here, a course from there. I'll give them a data coach, but I will make that, I will sponsor that, I will get that done, and I will make that one change. And you don't have to do that with every employee in every department in your entire company. 2 people a year who you can say that I will sponsor, it's a double whatever, 2 super high potential people who can become great symbols of progress, who you can truly personalize learning journeys for, right? It's just that give them data, give them coaching, give them this, give them that, right? It doesn't need you change 2 positions like that in a year, and that's enough. And I think that, given just the amount of influence, resources, and power, I keep saying, when you can make the change that many of you here have, how well are we using it, right? So I think these are the things, clear behaviors desired from leaders. So this is dusted. You know what they're expecting. And I think this is some of this. Again, this is not all of it, and might not work for everyone all the time. Obviously, that's not the purpose of this data, but does it work for some people some of the time? And can you guys use some of this for some of your teams, right? Next one. Wish list from HR. The other thing was, okay, this is what we're expecting from our leaders. What do we expect from HR? I think this equal work for equal pay for equal work of value. And anyway, compensation is again such a landmine to discuss. And nobody's supposed to know anybody's compensation, but I realize everybody knows everybody's compensation, or everybody thinks that they know everyone's compensation and they're always paid the poorest. I think these are sort of all, these human biases that we have. But like I keep saying, in my company, I would make everybody's compensation, including mine, public. You guys are not ready for it, I am, right? And then define who I'm paying what to. But I think some ways, and I'm making a joke of this, and it's not possible in large companies, I understand that. But how can you do this? Clearly, even when there is not, right? And I'm sure most of you track compensation data according to genders and according to level. Even if it's not, this perception is so damaging, and it's actually worse if you've actually taken the effort to ensure that it is equalizing over time, right? And people are looking for progress. I'm not sure they're looking for God, like everybody has to. I keep telling people, I can't erase your past. If you came from whatever, it's no way that any company can give you a 5x increase just because you chose to whatever. Over time, it will happen. But I think like this perception and this comfort that, yeah, we are being paid equally is a big thing that from HR leaders, women professionals expect. Safe environment, and of course, I think that goes without saying. Work-life balance, but I'll come to what they mean by work-life balance and what they think you mean by work-life balance, and that's the last slide. Development opportunities, again, obviously they're ambitious, they want to go ahead. And roadmap for advancement, which of course, IDP and everything else that all of you do. Now, the stark evidence, last thing dusted. Stark evidence that a meeting of minds is needed between HR and women professionals. One of the most interesting things, these are obviously on the vertical axis are all the things that women professionals felt was most important. And these are all the ones that, the horizontal axis is obviously all the ones that HR professionals felt were most important, right? in one of the conversations that we had with a mid-level, like maybe associate director, she said, listen, when I mean flexibility, I mean, can I take 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. off? Does not mean I want to go only remote and be put in a less accelerated career track, because right now there are so many formats all of us have. It's a great time to, in a way, be an employee, because you can really choose at different phases of your life. You want to be all remote, you want to be hybrid, you want to be gig, you want to moonlight, whatever, all of that, right? But she said, please understand, I'm asking for 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Right? I'm not saying I'll never come to office, I'll never travel for sales, I will never do this. I need those 2 hours, because that's when, whatever it is that she thinks that she needs to do. She said that conversation of flexibility, she said, just connotates, I want to go slow, and I don't take my work seriously, when it is about 2 hours of a time slot in a perfect day because of everything else, right? So I think this whole thing about obviously fancy devices and things like that, I think everybody is past it. Most people who we manage can, everybody likes nice new gadgets and nice new things, right? But it is really some of these other things that women professionals obviously desire much more and feel like they're not getting. You can download I'm going to leave the QR code here, because I think I'm hoping that you think that this is an interesting report for you to get into, and lots of much more than what I've presented. I've only presented 3 busted and 3 dusted, but of course there is much more. So I hope you will download, and of course the Harappa team and all women Harappa team is at the Harappa stall, and you can ask them for much more information. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks a lot, Shreyasi. I'll request you to please stay back. I'd like to invite on stage 𝗕𝗲𝗏 to please come forward and felicitate her for her talk.
But I don't get questions.
Do we have any questions?
Yes, towards last question.
Yes, the lady in yellow at the back.
I think that we've been mulling
Sorry,
over.
I can't hear you very well.
I'm not sure. Is this any better?
Yes, a little bit.
Maybe I should speak louder. I'll try and speak louder. Something we've been mulling over at the women's club at where I work. Just the imposter syndrome that a lot of women face. The solution is very easily rattled, but how does the practical application of getting over the imposter syndrome that maximum women face, how do you really work around something like that?
I think imposter syndrome essentially, the way, right, like if you're genuinely making efforts towards it, like I have stopped having imposter syndromes at work now, even though as being part of the 2%, because I know how much I work and how hard I work, and with sort of an honesty of spirit or whatever, right? And I think over time, then you know that, you say, oh my God, this was such a great cost to my personal, and so many things, right, that I do need it. It also needs a lot of positive validation from people around you. And I think that is really, really important. And I think we all need to realize that, we are such big figures in people's lives, right? I think there's this whole thing about, oh, nobody cares about work and everybody's disengaged and, life. That's not true. I really feel that we all seek as human beings so much validation from the 8, 9, 10 hours that we all spend at work. I feel like we're genuinely, I think as a society, this is one of the things, that not great at being really generous with praise, like truly at a human level, right? Like, oh my, and I think that can really go. And then you have to be specific, not like you did well, that's not useful. I think to really take away imposter syndrome, it's say, oh my God, you're so strategic. Right after a meeting, right, that you're so strategic, or you broke down the problem so well, or wow, you really came in to synthesize 4 people's conversations, right? And I think that giving compliments immediately after you see a demonstration of behavior, right, and being very specific, all of that is hard work. So you have to build the habits to be able to do that, and then of course enable other people in your teams and your company who are, who are observing this to be able to do that. But I think specific, timely, and often in terms of positive validation is what's useful. And I think, in fact, constructive improvement as well. Most people just want to be seen, that you care enough to say what they should be doing differently, but are doing so with the right words and being specific. I think people really value that. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much.